dear friend and hometown hero from ESPN, the great Kevin Negandhi. Kevin!
And how we doing, my man? Good to see you.
Dude, how about the Phillies, dude? They're ridiculous right now.
It's a lot of fun, and you know what? There's not a lot of stress because usually in May you're coming off a Sixers heartbreak, and you're like, "Where's this team? How come they're struggling? How come we're middling around 500?" The pitching's been incredible. We've got to savor everything we can about this pitching staff. It's everything we dreamed about, everything we hoped for 10 years ago when we were talking about our big four, right? And this group right now they're better, which I'll take, which I would have never thought we would be in this situation.
It's interesting because you're right about June is where it all heats up and everything else. But 26-11, all right, 11 straight. I had Buster Olney on yesterday, so Buster and I were talking. We covered ball together back in the day, and we were talking about Citizens Bank Park and how it's become a home field advantage that's unlike any other in baseball.
I love it. And you know the cool thing about this, Ant, is that players want to feel that, right? I hear this every offseason about free agency, and players want them to match that Phillies environment. They see it in the postseason, and it's contagious, and it's just great. Like, it's the opposite of what we were feeling last week when we were talking about the Knicks invading, Wells Fargo, right? It's the completely different vibe that you get at the bank. And I think Sixers fans will be back. I think that it's situational. But, just the vibe, I believe something magical is going to happen every single night. And to have that in May is unbelievable. And it also helps with the dog days of summer when you hit that little swoon or a losing streak to get this stuff built in where you're winning 18 of 21. And I know they're beating up bad teams, but I don't care because this is what you're supposed to do, right? And I love the way the Phillies. I've always said just get in. Let's see what happens, because look at what happened with the Braves and the way baseball's different now. Just get in, make sure you're healthy in September and October, and I don't care about anything else. I love the Phillies' attitude. I think JT Realmuto talked about this too in the spring training. When they were talking about, hey, we want to win the division. They were ticked off about how they had to scrap and fight. And if you can get home field advantage in the postseason, which would be critical when you look at how good the Dodgers potentially will be and how the Braves, have a chip on their shoulder. It's just nice day in and day out. You can go to the ballpark and you can count on certain things, right? And I enjoy it, man. I really do. I don't want it to end. It's fun that baseball is consistent every single night with this team, and they don't play down to the talent that's on the field. They make sure that they play their type of baseball.
And it's funny. The big story, obviously, brought to you by our good friends at TrueMark Financial Credit Union. Find out the credit union difference at TrueMark Financial today. I was going through some of the teams, right? Some of the old Phillies teams. Which one? If you look at 2011, obviously, is the franchise record year. They won 102 games. That was the four aces, right? Yeah. It's Halladay, Lee, Hamels, Oswalt, and Blanton is your fifth starter. So look at the lineup, though, right? Because this rotation is very good. It's not that rotation, but it's very good. Wheeler, would you agree, would be this of the whole group second behind Halladay, right?
Yeah, I've never seen another pitcher that reminds me of Roy Halladay more than Zach Wheeler, and it's all because of makeup. It's, hey, business. I'm pissed off if I'm giving up a run, and my job is to carry this team and try to go 7 to 8 innings. And it's the same attitude that Roy Halladay had that was so distinct with the team. So I love everything about what Wheeler brings, because Halladay to me was He was the best pitcher since I'm not kidding when I say this. He's the best pitcher the Phillies ever had since Steve Carlton, in my mind. I never felt more comfortable with a guy on the mound than Roy Halladay and do what when he's in the zone. And I feel the same way with Wheeler. So I put them in the same category.
I agree. So in 2011, Chooch behind the plate, Howard, and that was his last great year, 33 homers, 160 ribbies. Chase, who actually had a down year in 2011, Jimmy, Polanco at third, and it was Victorino, Ibanez, and Pence was the outfield. I mean, JT, Bryce, Stott, Turner, Bohm, Schwarber, Marsh, Castellanos. I think I go today.
Man, listen, I see what you're saying. But half that team that you mentioned in 2012 were World Series champs, and I've already proved it to win the biggest of all things, right? So, man.
Why you go 2011?
I would just because.
Yeah, but remember, Ibanez didn't win. Pence didn't win.
I said half the team, right? Half the line, right?
Yes.
Part of that still. Our core was still there, right?
Yes.
And you're right.
Yes.
You're right.
Yes.
Halladay didn't win. Lee didn't win. And we had Hamels that was in that rotation, but the rest of that rotation didn't win. You're right. Fair point. But man, like to have Howard, Jimmy, Chase, and Ruiz and Victorino, like. I don't know, man. Like that 2008 team carried over to 2011, 2012 will always be special.
Totally. I mean, I love that team. I mean, listen, I don't, my favorite guy of all time is Charlie Manuel.
Yeah.
So Charlie, I love him.
I got
to tell you, dude, I mean, I feel this way. Like, I love this team. I love Bohm. And I love that kid. I love Stott. I mean, Bryce might be like I can go channel my inner 12-year-old. I love that kid. Like that dude.
Here's the crazy thing.
Like he's ugly with a personality.
Here's the thing with Bryce. He's a bona fide superstar. Like everybody knows that. But have you ever remembered a player actually outplaying his contract and still has like 8-9 years left on their deal?
Crazy.
He's a bona fide superstar, and every single time that there's a moment, he meets that moment. Like
he does.
It's just unbelievable, and I would have never. It still kind of blows me away how
much. Dude,
he's
better. Listen, I love Utley and Howard. I love those guys. He's better.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. The only guy where it was like the biggest moments who was never afraid, I would say Bryce has that, is Jimmy Rollins. Jimmy Rollins in the biggest moments always delivered. Always delivered. And some people will say, well, Chase too. Jimmy, I will always have Jimmy a special place in my heart because of that MVP season and what he said, when we had no expectations in 2007, he's like, we're going to win. We're going to win the division. And the Mets came in all pumped up and how he led that team as the leader. And everybody, Chase was the quiet one. Ryan was the guy that was still young and then hid behind Jimmy because he knew Jimmy was the guy that would clear the path. And Jimmy just said, bring it all. It's all on me. And Bryce has the same thing. All on me. I will carry us no matter what. I will take us through the highs and lows. And I think that, when it comes to like the combination of Ryan, Chase, and Jimmy, we have it all in one guy in Bryce.
Yes. And then, you can't forget, like behind the plate, JT's a great player. Like he's
and I don't mean to be Debbie Downer. I think the one weakness this team has is we need a better backup catcher. And I know there's a lot of party animals that are against me because I'm saying that about Stubbs. I just think that when JT needs a break because he's going to go through those slumps for 3 weeks where it's like, oh boy, it's taking a toll as a hitter. We need a catcher that can come in and give him a legit break. I know Stubbs plays a certain role. I'm just saying when it comes to performance physically and the duration of an entire season, we need a better backup catcher. That's the one thing that I think is a big blemish on this team, so we can have JT fresh for the playoffs. And how about Bohm? Like, Bohm's a perfect example of just sometimes stick to the course. Let's ride it out. It's the same thing with Tyrese. Like, younger guys, he'll figure it out. Let's just stick with it and stay with the guy and let him develop and blossom at his own pace, right? I mean, he's the best third baseman in the entire league. And 2 years ago, he was struggling through the pressure, and let's just stay with him. Let's just stay with him. And we are reaping the rewards of a guy that could be the heart and soul of this team over the next 5 years when it comes to power.
I'm with you, brother. I'm completely with you. Hey, I want to bring something up to you. And you and I are obviously around the same age. And I think it was really interesting. Buster Olney brought up the clubhouse and how inclusive the clubhouse is, right? Like, that they go out of their way to make anybody who's called up or any newcomer feel at home. And I think that that's part of the generation today. And I juxtaposed 1993. So in 93, Macho Row, right? Like, and those guys, listen, that was the culture of the time. All they were was a product of 1993. It's not about like the makeup. That was the makeup. The culture of the time was, Macho Row. It was, they grind you. If you're a newcomer, they would torture you until you pass the test, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And it's interesting because it's better now. Like, but listen, it's not all like, I do think that toughness was a great attribute from those days. But the inclusive nature is better today. Would you agree?
I completely agree. Just look how they interact with Rojas and how he fit in last year when they needed him, and like his relationship with Marsh, like how Bryce went to bat for Bryson Stott like a couple years ago, and they were ticked off that he wasn't getting any time, and the previous manager wasn't playing the young guys, and they were like, no, we need to play these guys. They need to help us. Like completely. It's the opposite of what we saw in 93. 93 was a cast of misfits coming together to figure things out, and who were all ticked off, and we had pieces everywhere, and Inky, and like Darren Dalton, and Lenny was was a misfit from the Mets. Like, it was all coming together, and they had a chip on their shoulder, right? So I think this is more like, hey, this is a destination to be at. We want to be here, and then we need help from everybody. Let's embrace all these guys because it's not just about us. And that's led by Bryce. I mean, Bryce is the guy, man. He's a great leader, man. And he's kind of built the culture of this clubhouse because you follow the leader. You feed off of his attitude. You feed off of what he wants. And we've seen decisions made. I know people were ticked off about it, and upset about Hoskins, but like, I'm sorry, I miss Reese. But it's Bryce's clubhouse, and Bryce wants to play first, and he's got his guys around him, and the guys that are around him embrace everybody around themselves when they bring in new people. I'm all for that, man. Like, it has worked out really, really
and
well.
I think it's a product of today and today's culture.
You're right.
But part of that inclusiveness, I think, is society's evolution, right? Like, that's a good thing. That, you're embracing everyone in that sense.
Totally. And you nailed it. Totally agree. And, we see that. We see that in the NFL. I see that a lot of that in the NBA.
Yeah.
Young guys. I mean, when I watch the Thunder, like, just they are all about young guys coming together and everybody embracing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, when you're watching certain teams and you're like, okay, I see it there. You're right. It is this generation, and that's a good thing.
All right. I have Jason Campbell coming on, the head coach at Toledo.
Love him, man. I love him. Underrated.
Right? Isn't he a good? he's a good coach. And obviously, we're going to talk about Kenyon Mitchell, and we're going to talk about. You remember he played with Nick Sirianni back in the day at Mount Vernon.
Kendall's one of those guys. Every year he produces NFL talent, and you sit there and you wonder how come he doesn't have a Power 5 job, because his name's often mentioned. Like, I've heard his name for a handful of other gigs. I love his offense, and so I'm a big fan of Kendall. And you know what? He gets guys prepared. The guys that make it are prepared. So it'll be an interesting conversation. I look forward to it because he can help us understand a little bit more of the Mitchell adjustment and what we're getting in the city, which we all feel like is, a home run pick there at cornerback.
Yeah, it was funny. I saw there was a picture of him or a video of him and DeGene and during rookie workouts, and I'm going, look at these two. These two look like studs.
They are. When you have Kendall on, too, do me a favor. Ask him a question about, like, Quinyon talking about the portal and how, Nick Saban wasn't shy on draft night, saying their number one target. I'd love to hear about, the perspective of Kendall as the head coach who held on to Quinyon, and Quinyon staying loyal to the program, even though millions of dollars were on the other side potentially on going to a Power 5. I mean, big-time Power 5 school.
Oh, yeah. It's in my notes, man. It's one of the things, because it's one of those things that I loved character-wise from him, Kev. Like, I was like, I love this. The kid stayed loyal. That's the kind of kid you want.
Totally. And listen, and if you left, I don't think you and I or anybody would have faulted him. If you got 7 figures on the other side and probably joined an Alabama team that already had 2 potential first-round picks in the secondary, and then they're making you the number one guy. That just shows you how they evaluated Quinyon Mitchell, specifically in that secondary, when you've got Kool-Aid and you've got Terry and Arnold already back there, and they felt like if we can get him as our number one guy, it just shows you how good Quinyon is.
Yeah, incredible. Kev, how are the boys?
They're great. My oldest celebrated his 12th birthday today. So
nice.
Yeah, he's happy. He's in a good place. So we got baseball tonight. We got baseball this weekend. So I appreciate you asking, and they're great. They're pumped up. What was the reaction after take your kid to work day? Did they enjoy it? Did the boys enjoy it?
Yeah, they loved it. Well, I mean, once they're going to at 11 and 14. You know. Yeah, I will tell you, the 2 weeks ago, not last week, the weekend before, Moss went yard for the first time, and like legit, like it was about 250, 260.
Attaboy.
He went yard Saturday, and he followed it back on Sunday. So he's got the bug, like in a big way.
Yeah.
Like take me to the field every day. Take me to the field. Take me to the field. Plus, he got a new bat, so he's like. I said, dude, I can't turn you down after you went yard twice.
And that's the greatest feeling, especially this generation of kids that want to go outside and play, and they don't want a device in their hand. It's the greatest feeling in the world. Like I came home from work last night. It was getting dark, and my middle one, my 10-year-old, I can relate to what you just shared. My 10-year-old had a lacrosse stick in his hand. He's like, can we do some lacrosse right now? And it was getting dark. And I was like, hey, man, it's getting dark. And he's like, can we just stay outside? And I said, I'll go get a glove. Let's go outside. Let's have a catch. And he's like, done, Dad. And we can barely see, and we're on one of the street lights. And
you got to throw it high.
And we're having a catch, and I was like, I will never say no. And for any parent that's listening, you're experiencing that. When they say, let's go outside, just say yes.
Yes.
No matter how tired you are, just say yes, because it gets them off a screen, it gets them off a device, and it gets them outside. And that's our childhood.
Amen, brother. Love you, buddy. You're the best.
Appreciate you, man. Keep hitting those bombs, Massimo. Talk to you soon, brother.
The great Kevin Negandhi.
We all silly like the mayor.